Hi, everybody. I'm Pete Christensen,
I'm Coffee Brown.
and welcome to episode 17 of
Don't Die Dumb.
We always like to start by answering viewer questions and viewer remarks. One of them, and we've gotten a remark similar to this before, said, it's nice to see two old guys who have something to say. On the subject of being old, I don't picture myself old. Although I am, obviously.
It's weird being the same age as old people, isn't it?
Oh man, I'm telling you, my butt looks like a canoe. My hair is migrating from the back of my head down to my shoulders, and doing quite well there. By the way, I'm growing barbed wire in my ears.
I've been reading up
But-
about how to do nose hair comb overs.
Oh, very good. Well, you find a lemon, put him in jail, as the conservative would say. But my point is that a lot of people think that it's over when you hit a certain age, and because of that, once you're not old until your regrets replace your dreams, they say. But I think you're not old until you stop having ambition, and ambition doesn't have to be another job. The point of life is to get out of the job market as quick as humanly possible and go back to living your life. Your life was the weekends in many cases. When you hit an age when you retire, that's a chance to do all the things you never had time to do before. And I don't want to be one of these guys that putters around the house. Oh, that's Pete. He's got his pants pulled up to his nipples. He's wearing a straw hat with a little green visor on the front, complaining about the government 24 hours a day. And he's fixing something that no one wants and that doesn't exist. He's fixing his rotary phone. Okay, that doesn't interest me. Your thoughts?
Did I tell you my invention for old guys?
What?
You know how as you get older, your belt line starts to move up? Like,
Oh, yeah.
It used to be on your hips, and then it's up to your umbilicus, and it gets higher. Well, we're all living longer, so I've invented a pair of pants that has eye holes below the belt line.
Oh, very good. It's better than unzipping to say hello.
So I'd say a little differently than Pete. I'd say that for me, every stage of life has felt like the best stage of life so far. There are things that were easier for me when I was younger, but there are things that are easier for me now. And when I was younger, the world was full of potential, and I could do anything, and I could dream of being a fireman or a doctor or an Indian chief. Now I know how that story turned out, and so I don't have the same broad range of dreams that I did when I was 20, but I also don't have the same broad range of doubts and fears. The story has occurred. I know the ending, largely, up to this point at least. And because I've exercised all my life, I feel generally pretty vigorous and so forth. So I would say, I'm 70 by the way, I don't find this age to be uncomfortable or unpleasant, and I thought I would. And by the way, demographers say that our peaks occur basically in our 20s and in our late 60s. And that kind of feels right to me. My job wasn't something I wanted to escape from. My work wasn't something I wanted to escape from. I loved working as a physician. The job was a killer, but the work was rewarding, and I feel grateful to have been able to help people over the course of a lifetime. And I still work now as a volunteer at the university, teaching in various different contexts. So I don't think this stage of life is one where you have to be in a rocking chair or go fishing all the time. Though fine if that's what you want to do with it. What I would say to people who aren't this age yet is don't fear it. It's actually full of advantages. And to people who are and aren't happy with it, instead of blaming it on birthdays, ask yourself what's missing from your life and then go out and reintegrate that.
Now, another comment had to do with both our comments toward the end of the show. One was that Pete said that the MAGA movement is actually a white supremacist movement. And they wanted to remind us that it was the Democrats that were in favor of slavery back in the days of Lincoln and the Civil War.
So actually, thank you for that comment. And by the way, the person who wrote this expressed that they were pretty cranky about being called racist. So there's several things I want to say about that. One is thank you. Thank you for watching, even though you're angry. Thank you for complaining to us rather than just grousing at the television set. I appreciate all of that. And you're absolutely correct. In the early days of civil rights, it was the Republicans who drove the car, and it was the Southern Democrats that fought it tooth and nail. Somewhere along the line, things flipped. So now it's modern conservatives. Well, not even conservatives. It's modern Republicans that have become racist. And they're not even racist because they care about color. They're racist because they think they can build a coalition around it. And it's working. So if you think it was unfair of us to say that modern Republicans are a white nationalist party, I think the burden of proof is on you, but send us in why you think we're wrong. My warrant is they got the Supreme Court to okay profiling based on accents and skin color. You guys lost your minds because Snow White had a Mediterranean skin color. Not even dark, just Mediterranean, right? Trump has called lots of dark-skinned nations shithole nations. Nazi paraphernalia are openly displayed, as are Ku Klux Klan paraphernalia and Proud Boys paraphernalia at MAGA gatherings. And the language of the recruiting for ICE, and this is from an article in Atlantic. I didn't know we were going to be talking about this today, so I don't have the specifics in front of me, but read the recent article in Atlantic about the racist dog whistles that are used in the ICE recruiting campaign. They're very explicitly looking for people who think America is for Americans doesn't mean Americans are for all Americans. It means for Americans who look like they came from the British Isles. And if you think that is not racist, tell us why we're wrong. And if you think that is racist, but you don't like the sound of it, then you need to tell your party why it's wrong. I don't think you can save the Republican Party, actually. I think you need to start a Lincoln Party. But great, send in your complaints. Tell us why you think you're wrong. You're right, the Democrats were originally the party of racism, but it's flipped. So either correct us or correct your party.
Now, another statement, and we usually talk about these off camera so that we can discuss them a little bit, we didn't on this subject, was that the swastika is not a Nazi symbol, it's a Native American symbol.
Well, the swastika has been used by Hindus, Buddhists, Native Americans, and ancient Chinese. And by the way, the swastika is the one that goes, I think, counterclockwise, and there's a version of it that goes clockwise. In most older traditions, it's a symbol of the sun. The German Nazis grabbed it because it was a positive symbol of, sunrise and new dawn and all those things that they wanted to go with. The Germans were great at symbolism, the Nazis. And one thing I'll give them is that their propagandistic art was some of the best propagandistic art I've ever seen, way better than the Soviets did.
Another comment was that we said that they are, ICE is taking people off the streets, and they were saying, and the comment was, they're taking nobody away in New Mexico. Well, that's not true. Native Americans in New Mexico, the Pueblos, are now issuing birth certificates and telling people to carry their IDs because they took numerous Native Americans away down in the southeastern section of the state, I believe Doña Ana County or Lee County, and I could be wrong on those. But yeah, it is happening. 63,000 people are in Alcatraz. 30% of them have no police record. Can you say that? I could say I have no criminal record, but I got a police record. I've been pulled over for speeding, no seatbelt, numerous things. But can you say you have no police record at all?
And let's imagine that nobody was being pulled off the street in New Mexico. So what? They are all over the country. And let's imagine that everything you've been told by the far right about immigrants is true, which it is not. It is factually not true. Immigrants have been very good for the economy, and they commit less crimes than natural-born citizens. But pretend for a moment that was true. Pretend that immigrants are stealing jobs, they're draining the economy because they're using social services, and they commit some crimes. The ones who haven't committed crimes, the one crime they've committed is they've crossed the border illegally, which is a misdemeanor the first time and a nonviolent felony the second time. That doesn't merit those aren't capital offenses. They don't merit lethal force. Sending SWAT teams in to catch janitors and factory workers is utterly ridiculous. And sending SWAT teams that are half-clothed in ragtag uniforms with their faces covered, minimally trained, leads to things like the Alex Preddy shooting, which I want to talk about next.
All right. And before you didn't tell, let me say that the biggest thing I keep hearing is that they are illegal immigrants. They have to be taken off the street because they're murderers and rapists. The percentage of, and I often hear that homeless people are criminals. Only 19% of homeless people are criminals, and of that, I believe it's 16% are criminal records for vagrancy, loitering, things of that nature.
Right, they're criminals because they're homeless.
Yeah.
In a sense, it's the same with illegal immigrants. They're criminals because they are illegal immigrants. But apart from that, they commit less crimes than the general population. And this is from Texas's own statistics, by the way. Texas, like the heart of We Hate Mexicans, right? That wasn't where I wanted to go. I want to talk about Alex Preddy for a minute because there's some nuance to this that both sides are ignoring. On the one hand, within hours of Alex Preddy getting shot, Trump and Kristi Noem, said this was a organized terrorist who had, threatened police with a gun and attacked with lethal force, and they were only defending themselves.
An assassin, they call it.
And an assassin, right? Well, there is a lot of video of this, and you can see very, very clearly the only thing he ever had in his hand is a cell phone. He does have a gun on his belt that he had a permit for, and that gun is discovered after they have tackled him. They're holding him face down on the ground, and one of the agents sees the gun, without comment, in his holster on his belt, and takes the gun out and is walking away with it. The other agent sees the gun in the ICE agent's hand, not even in the belt, and never in Alex Preddy's hand, in the ICE agent's hand, and starts yelling, "Gun, gun, gun," and starts shooting. Now, I'm willing to say that this guy panicked and his training was terrible, but I don't see how that's any kind of an exoneration for ICE. They're hiring racists with terrible training. This is what you would expect to occur, and it did. But it turns out that 11 days earlier, Alex Preddy had gotten into some kind of argument with ICE, and there's a video of him, it's only about 10 seconds long, that shows him kicking a rear tail light off an ICE van, and the guys bundle out and sort of harass him a bit and then drive off. The whole thing is like 10 seconds. On the one hand, that wouldn't be any kind of justification for the shooting because A, the ICE agents who shot him wouldn't have known about that. B, he's armed in that first video too, but he never draws his weapon. And C, kicking the taillight off a van would not be grounds for lethal response, or even a self-defense response. It would just be like disturbing the peace. So none of that has a bearing, but it's all being used to promote the narrative that this guy was a violent assassin. So to the left, I would say you must not use any violence or any violent rhetoric, because right now Trump is begging you to do that so he can put the country under police state. We need to, the left needs to show the country that they are the reasonable, rational party. Whenever we lose our temper, we give fuel to the right. But nothing in either video justifies what happened to Alex Preddy. And even if it did, nothing would justify President Trump lying about it within hours because he literally just made up a story that sounded good to him. And no one went with it.
Before the investigation.
Before there was any investigation. And the investigation itself was corrupted. They took evidence off the scene before any crime scene investigators got there. So it's nearly impossible to reconstruct from the evidence what happened. But luckily there are so many videos we can perfectly reconstruct what happened. And it's not what ICE says.
Let me point out that in Nazi Germany, when the Nazis were sending SS officers around door to door and dragging people out of their homes to places where we never saw them again, which is very similar to the people they had sent down to El Salvador, and we'll probably never see them again. We, America, came to their defense and defense of the world. There's no one out there to save us.
And
we have to do this ourselves.
Remember the story of Kristallnacht. They came for the Jews, and I said nothing. They came for the mentally disabled, and I said nothing. They
came
came
for
for
the
this group
gypsies.
and that group. They came for the gypsies, and I said nothing. And then they came for me, and nobody said anything. If you think any authoritarian government is going to be your friend, first of all, look at how Trump treats his friends. Second of all, look at what's happened to the farmers. Look at U.S. citizens being yanked off the street because they don't have any proof of ID on them. Or the fact that TSA is now charging more now if you don't have a real ID and so forth. If you think that a country that makes you present your ID card for walking on the street, or that can haul you into a van with no warrant and no other prior cause because you have olive skin or an accent, if you think that country is going to favor you, you have never ever read anything or seen anything about how dictatorships work. None of them work that way. You will definitely be on somebody's shit list sooner or later, and you will definitely get hauled away because dictators are afraid of everybody. Look at Trump, how paranoid he is. Every single thing he doesn't like is terrorist. When Kyle Rittenhauser was walking around with an M16 at a BLM protest, well, he was a patriot, even though he crossed state lines so he could shoot somebody. But Preddy, who is on the opposite, which Trump views him as being on the opposite side, he has a licensed holstered gun, and Trump said, well, if you have a gun, the police are going to shoot you. Now remember, the NRA was among his strongest supporters. But he's telling the NRA that legal possession of a gun is grounds to be murdered by the police or by ICE.
No, we're never going to get to any subjects because we have too
That
many.
wasn't a subject?
To other subjects that were
okay.
planned because we're still answering questions and comments that people made. Now, someone said earlier, people said that was a good idea that you guys came up with to take statues of Confederates, put them in museums, and label them. This is someone who fought in a losing cause or was a traitor to our country, but he did what he felt was right, things of that nature. So what they asked this week was, well, what kind of statues would you put up? And the easy answer for me would be, let's put up statues of philanthropists. Let's put up statues of people who have done social good in the country. Do we have to have a tank when we could have a statue of Mother Teresa, or we could have a statue of Paul Whelan or some of the other people that have spent their whole life helping others? What's your idea?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great question. And as I was processing it, I'm thinking kind of almost everybody has some baggage with them, right? Like I'm a fan of the statue of Martin Luther King, but it looks like he probably did plagiarize some of the stuff that he wrote. Doesn't change the fact that I agree with most of his sentiments. Thomas Jefferson is a hero for me for being one of the founding fathers and for his rhetoric about freedom, but this is a guy who fathered children on one of his own slaves and then sold his own children. So it's hard to find somebody who isn't contaminated. But with the Confederate statues, we're explicitly talking about heroic defenders of slavery. Now remember, at the top of the hour, we were responding to the criticism, well, you shouldn't call right-wingers racists. Well, if you're wanting to have memorials to the heroes of slavery, you need to look in a mirror and ask yourself, are Coffee and Pete wrong about this?
Let me play the devil's advocate.
All right.
People from the South, they need heritage too. They need heroes too.
Oh yeah, they do. And there have been some great people from the South. But they don't need heritage itself is another code word for Northern Western European immigrants. It means, did your family come over on the Mayflower or thereabouts? And the notion is that they would be Anglo-Saxons. So when people use heritage, that's one of the dog whistles for racism, and I don't have any patience for it. But the notion that there is such a thing as a heritage for the South, I mean, there's music, they drove the early economy of the country. Some of the founding fathers came from there, some of whom were slave owners. So yeah, there's a lot for the South to be proud of. And if they want to be proud of people who have complicated histories, I don't think we can get away from that because pretty much everybody does have a complicated history. But pro-slavery heroes are racist. There's just, if you can talk your way out of that, send me how you did it. I want to hear the rationale for saying that Confederate heroes are not racist heroes.
But you didn't answer the question.
I thought I did.
Who would you put a statue up of?
Well,
Give me 3 examples.
in that way, I would pick Abraham Lincoln, who I think of as reasonable and balanced and put the country before his own personal views. I would put Thomas Jefferson, who, despite his complicated history, is absolutely foundational to the belief in America in equality and freedom. Even though he didn't enact that. Nevertheless, we wouldn't have that without him. And George Washington, specifically for declining to be called Your Highness, for refusing the role of king, which now we have reinstated.
Now, on one of the subjects we actually had planned to talk about, and you didn't.
I'm not
but
making faces.
Kidney cancer. For some reason, that's in the news again. Why? Is that on the increase?
I do not know the answer to that. I do know that cancers across the board are increasing at younger ages, and the medical community is freaking out about it. It's a really big deal. The good news is that, contrary to popular belief, cure rates for cancers have gotten much, much better. Across the board, they're well above 70%. And for many cancers that used to be death sentences, like breast cancer, actual cure rates are above 90%. So when people think that we're not winning the war on cancer, and I can see why it looks that way, they are mistaken. We are winning the war on cancer. We're doing great. But everybody who lives long enough will die of something, right? What's concerning, though, is that while we're getting better at treating cancer, more and more of it is occurring younger and younger. Cancer used to be a disease primarily of older people, and it was tragic bad luck when a young person got it. Now it's becoming pretty routine.
But this administration just cut $192 million from child cancer research. That could set us back quite a ways, couldn't it?
So now you were getting to a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and I think that should probably be our next half-hour topic, should be that topic. But here's a spoiler alert. The U.S. got tremendous international reputation from the fact that we had the best scientific, medical, and educational infrastructures in the world. We ruled the world in those regards. And that lasted from 1950 until into the 90s. And then we became more and more anti-science. And this country has always had a schism between pro and anti-education individuals. By the way, one of the ones I want to get to is higher education, the pros and cons of higher education, which is something I actually know a fair amount about. So we benefited hugely by being the world mecca for science and reason and medicine and research and education. People were sending from all over the world. We're sending people here to get educated, and the very best of them typically stayed here. We brain drained the rest of the world. Now we have a measurable decline. We have people leaving our country. We're the one getting brain drained because other places in the world are more hospitable to highly educated or scientific or research-oriented people, and particularly if they are people who are of color or weren't born in America. This has become a very unfriendly place for the world's best brains. How does that make sense? How exactly are we helping our economy by driving our best scientists and engineers to other countries?
One of the subjects I wanted to bring up today, but we'll save it for our next broadcast, is how do you make your country or society better? And one of the best ways is to get everyone educated. That's why I think it'd be a great idea to make trade schools free for everyone. But we'll get into that next time. We don't have much time left. I always like to end it on something light. And I want to talk about the Melania documentary. That's not light. That's the Melania documentary. I have mixed feelings about this. Number one, the First Lady should be off limits. And all the things people said about Michelle Obama, that she was transgender, she was actually a man, and that she was a prostitute, really mean, uncalled for things, were way out of line. And I think saying mean, cruel things about Melania is bad too. And I do admire her for this. Came from apparently a poor family, was forced but economically to become a sex worker, and rose all the way up to be the first lady of one of the more prosperous nations in the world. So, and you can say, yeah, she slept her way to the top. Perhaps, but I think there's a line. She did have some ingenuity. Now, some people who I've talked to who have met her say she's just as shallow as Trump is. But where is the line here? Before we get into the movie quickly, and by the way, the movie is a documentary, and it's got only 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's bad subject matter.
Did you see the movie?
No, I talked to Bill Goodykunz, who is a critic who saw it, and he said there's nothing revealed here. There's nothing. I don't expect her to do a tell-all book, but tell me the inner workings of the White House or the gardening or something, or why you ripped out the rose garden. Why was that important to you? Tell me something I don't know. And according to him, there's nothing here that's very interesting.
So I got almost nothing on Mrs. Trump. It is interesting that she was here legally on a green card, but working illegally at the time that Trump left his then wife for her. But the rest of the stuff you said, both the rumors and the stuff you describe as factual, I know nothing about.
Yeah.
And I don't really care about her, Melania, one way or the other. I mean, she's married to a guy who's creating a lot of problems, but she herself is just neutral in my mind. And she doesn't have to do or mean anything to me. She's the wife of this guy, and if she wants to stump for causes, good for her. Most first ladies have, and I endorse that. If she wants to just be quiet and more out of the limelight, which Michelle Obama very much wanted, I'm good with that too. Honestly, she's Mrs. Trump to me.
Now, over the weekend, we had 10,000 people, some say as many as 20, in downtown Albuquerque protesting against ICE. And I see online that pictures of people protesting have been taken from aerial shots claiming to be people lining up to see the Melania movie. And
yeah, they took pictures of the protesters and labeled them as people lining up to see the Melania movie. That's pretty hilarious. But again, as far as I know, Melania didn't cause that. I'm not going to, I don't want to throw any shade on Melania. I don't care about her one way or the other.
Okay. And also, some people they want to fill some theaters up. So people are getting paid $50 a piece to go see the movie so they can get shots of the theaters being packed. Now,
would you see that movie for $50? Would that be enough money to make you sit through that movie?
No, I can get $50 easier than that.
Okay.
But people say, well, that's a complete lie. When I was living in Phoenix, they were offering people $50 and you got a free T-shirt if you would attend a Trump rally and sit behind him. So don't say it's not possible. In any event.
And they were accusing the other party of doing exactly that. So one of the things I see over and over on the right is that they accuse the left of doing something because they're paving the way for themselves to do it, like stealing this next election. That's really problematic. When the right says, oh my God, all the people on the left are doing this, it usually means they're planning to do that.
Yeah, Mike Johnson today was talking about how the president wants election integrity. And the president said that the New Mexico elections are one of the most corrupt in history. That's a lie. The stats show we have one of the cleanest elections in the nation. I'm an election judge, and I can tell you the checks and balance system here are tremendous. But they offered to pull the ICE out of Minnesota if they would turn over their voting rolls. They're going to purge those rolls. Mark my word, that's their plan. They're going to get rid of hundreds and thousands of people. What they did in Georgia...
As they have done before.
Yeah. In Georgia, they said, well, there's John Smith. So all these other people named John Smith, they got to go because that's obviously fake.
John Smith, yeah.
Yeah.
And remind me, is this the same guy who said, yes, I will trust an election if I win?
Yeah. Same guy.
I'm just wondering if it's the same guy or,
Now, next time...
Big fat guy, orange?
We're going to talk about the arts, and we're going to talk about the fact that healthcare in New Mexico, because people wanted to talk about some local things, how we're losing doctors and why we're losing doctors and what we can do about it. Until that time, I'm Pete Christensen.
I'm Coffee Brown.
And remember,
don't die dumb.